My name is Anna Volkova, and for most of my adult life, I believed happiness was something you built slowly. Not something you found, not something that suddenly appeared in front of you. Something you earned. For 7 years, my husband Maxim and I saved every extra dollar we could. We skipped vacations. We repaired old furniture instead of buying new things. We celebrated birthdays at home, cooked instead of ordering food, and told ourselves the same sentence every time life felt too difficult. Someday, we'll have our own house, not a rented apartment, not a place where we had to ask permission before hanging a picture on the wall. A real home, a place where our son Kirill could grow up. Kirill was 8 years old, and he was different from most children his age. While other kids spent hours playing video games or running around the neighborhood, he preferred building things with his hands. He could spend an entire afternoon with his construction sets, creating tiny cities that only existed inside his imagination. Sometimes I worried about him. He noticed things other people missed: a nervous smile, a strange pause in someone's voice, a person looking away too quickly. Once, when he was 6, he asked me, "Mom, why do adults say they're fine when their faces look sad?" I laughed because I didn't know how to answer. But deep down, I wondered the same thing. My husband Maxim was the opposite of Kirill. Where our son was quiet and observant, Maxim was confident and energetic. He could walk into a room full of strangers and leave 10 minutes later knowing everyone's name. People trusted him easily. Maybe too easily. He worked as a construction engineer, and he had a talent for making impossible projects sound simple. But Maxim had one weakness. He hated admitting he was wrong. Even when he knew he had made a mistake, he would rather stay silent than say the words, "I was wrong." At the time, I thought it was just a personality trait. I didn't realize that some people hide more than mistakes. Sometimes they hide entire parts of themselves. The day we found the house, I remember feeling like life had finally rewarded us. It was a Saturday morning when our real estate agent called. "Anna, I think I found something you'll love." I almost didn't believe him. We had seen dozens of houses before. Some were too expensive. Some were falling apart. Some looked perfect online but felt empty when we walked inside. But this one was different. The house stood at the end of a quiet street surrounded by old trees. It had a large backyard, a wooden porch, tall windows, and a small garden that looked like someone had carefully cared for it for decades. When I stepped inside for the first time, I stopped. I don't know how else to describe it. It felt familiar. The sunlight came through the windows and covered the wooden floor. The walls were warm beige. There was a fireplace in the living room, and beside it stood an old bookshelf filled with empty spaces where someone's books had once been. I walked slowly from room to room. Kitchen, living room, second floor, a small bedroom that would become Kirill's. I could already imagine our lives there. Christmas mornings, family dinners, Kirill running through the garden. Maybe even another child someday. Maxim stood beside me, looking around with a smile. "Can you see it?" he asked. "What?" "Us here." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He pointed toward the backyard. "Kirill playing outside. You working near that window. Me fixing something that doesn't need fixing." I laughed. That last part is the most realistic. For the first time in years, we weren't dreaming about the future. We were standing inside it. The price was surprisingly low, almost too low, but our agent Sergey explained that the owners wanted a quick sale. "The previous family moved away," he said. "They didn't want to wait months for the right buyer." I remember asking, "Why did they leave?" Sergey smiled politely. "People move for many reasons: work, family, money." His answer was normal, but something about the way he said it bothered me, like he had practiced it, like he had answered that question before. I looked at Maxim. He noticed too, but he only shrugged. "We've been searching for years. Maybe this is just luck. Maybe he was right. Maybe sometimes life really does give you exactly what you want." We signed the papers 2 weeks later. The day we received the keys, I cried. Not because of the house, because of everything it represented. All those years of waiting, all those sacrifices, all those moments when we wondered if we would ever get here. I held the keys in my hand and thought, this is where our new life begins. I didn't know then that the house had already lived another life before us. and someone was desperately hoping we would never discover it. The first strange thing happened before we even moved in. While the movers were carrying boxes inside, I noticed our neighbors watching us. At first, I thought they were just curious. New people moving into the neighborhood always attract attention. But these weren't friendly looks. They weren't smiling. They weren't waving. They were watching like they were waiting for something, like they knew something we didn't. One woman stood across the street near a flower garden. She was probably around 60 years old, with gray hair tied neatly behind her head. She held a pair of gardening scissors in her hand, but wasn't cutting anything. She was just staring at our house. When I walked over to introduce myself, she immediately looked away. "Hello," I said. "I'm Anna. We're the new owners." She forced a smile. "New owners." The way she repeated those words made me uncomfortable. "Yes, we're very happy to be here." She looked at the house again, then back at me. "Did you know what happened here?" My smile disappeared slightly. "What do you mean?" For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then she lowered her voice. "I mean, did the agent tell you everything?" I felt a strange pressure in my chest. "Everything about what?" The woman looked over her shoulder toward the house. Then she said something I would remember for the rest of my life. "Everyone who buys that house thinks they found a dream." She paused, but nobody asks why someone was willing to let it go. Before I could respond, she turned around and walked back to her garden. I stood there, confused. When I returned inside, Maxim was carrying a box from the hallway. "What was that about?" he asked. I told him what she said. He listened quietly. Then he smiled. "Anna, old neighborhoods are full of stories. People get attached to places. Maybe she just doesn't like change." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But that night, while unpacking boxes in our new bedroom, I noticed something strange. Behind an old cabinet that the previous owners had left behind, there was a small scratch on the wall. At first, I thought it was just damage, but when I looked closer, I realized it wasn't random. Someone had carved letters into the wood. A name, a child's name. Max. I froze, because that was my husband's name, and beneath it was a date, 20 years earlier. I called Maxim into the room. "Did you ever live here?" He walked toward the wall. The moment he saw the carving, his face changed. Not confusion, not surprise. Fear. And before I could ask what he knew, he whispered, "Anna, we need to leave this house." The moment Maxim whispered, "Anna, we need to leave this house," everything inside me went silent, not because I believed him, because I didn't. For 8 years, I had known my husband as a calm, logical person, the kind of man who checked every detail before making a decision, the kind of man who would spend 3 hours comparing different insurance plans just to save a few dollars. Maxim didn't panic. Ever. But now he was standing in our bedroom, staring at a carved name on the wall like he had just seen a ghost. And that scared me more than the name itself. "Leave?" I repeated. My voice sounded strange, even to me. "What are you talking about?" Maxim looked toward the hallway, then toward the window, like he was afraid someone might be listening. "Not tonight," he finally said. I stared at him. "Not tonight?" He ran his hand through his hair. "I need to think." That answer made me angry, not because he was scared, because he was hiding something. Again. I stepped closer. "Maxim, there is a name carved into the wall. Your name, from 20 years ago, in a house you told me you had never seen before." He didn't answer. "Tell me the truth." For several seconds, he just stood there. Then he said, "I don't know why it's here." It was the kind of answer that sounded honest, but it was not enough. That night, we didn't unpack another box. We didn't celebrate our first night in our dream home. We sat in silence at the kitchen table while our son Kirill slept upstairs. I watched Maxim, the man I loved, the man I trusted. And for the first time in our marriage, I wondered if there was an entire part of him I had never met. The next morning, something happened that made everything even stranger. At exactly 8:15, someone knocked on our door. When I opened it, I saw the woman from across the street. The neighbor with the flowers, the woman who had warned me. She was holding a small basket of homemade bread, a normal neighborly gesture, except her face wasn't friendly. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning." She looked past me, into the house. "Is your husband here?" The question surprised me. "Why?" She hesitated, then smiled slightly. "I just wanted to welcome both of you." Something about that answer felt wrong, not what she said, what she avoided saying. Maxim appeared behind me. The second the woman saw him, she froze. It lasted only a moment, but I noticed, and so did Maxim. "Hello," he said. The woman looked at him carefully. Then she whispered, "You really don't remember." Maxim's face changed. "What?" She shook her head. "Nothing." Then she handed me the basket. "Welcome to the neighborhood, Anna." And she walked away. I closed the door slowly. "What was that?" I asked. Maxim didn't respond. "Maxim." He looked at me. "I honestly don't know." But I knew he was lying. Not completely. Maybe he didn't know everything, but he knew something. And now I needed answers. Later that afternoon, while Maxim was outside fixing a loose fence panel, I decided to look around the house, not because I wanted to invade someone's privacy, because I needed to understand what we had bought. The previous owners had left several things behind: an old lamp, some books, a wooden cabinet in the basement. The house was supposed to be empty, but it felt like someone had left pieces of their life behind intentionally, like they wanted the next person to find them. In the basement, I discovered a small locked box hidden behind a shelf. It was covered in dust. I called Maxim. "Did you know about this?" He came downstairs. The moment he saw the box, he stopped. Again, that reaction, that tiny hesitation. I noticed every single one now. "What?" I asked. "Nothing. Maxim." He sighed. "I just think we should open it." Inside were old photographs, dozens of them. Most showed the house, the garden, the backyard, but then I found one that made my hands shake. It showed a family standing in front of the house. A man, a woman, a little girl, and a teenage boy. I looked closer. The teenage boy looked familiar. Very familiar. I turned the picture around. There was a date written on the back. 20 years ago, and below it, family home, before everything changed. I looked at Maxim. He was staring at the photo. Not surprised, not confused, heartbroken. "You know them," I said. He didn't answer. "You know this family." Finally, he sat down on the basement floor. His face looked older, like someone had taken away years of pretending. "The boy is me." My stomach dropped. The room suddenly felt smaller. "You lived here?" He nodded. "Yes." I waited for an explanation, for anything, but he said nothing. "Why didn't you tell me?" His eyes filled with shame. "Because I didn't want this part of my life to exist anymore." I felt tears building in my eyes. "Maxim, you don't erase 20 years of your life just because you don't talk about them." He looked away. "I know." That was the first time he admitted something without defending himself. And somehow that hurt more because it meant he knew. He knew he had hidden something from me. Before I could ask more questions, we heard a sound upstairs, a door closing. Both of us froze. "Did you lock the front door?" Maxim asked. "Yes." We slowly walked upstairs. The house was silent, too silent. Then we saw it, a photograph placed in the middle of the living room floor, a photograph that wasn't there before. I picked it up. My hands went cold. It was the same family, the same house. But this time, there was writing on the back. A message. 3 words. "Ask your husband." I turned toward Maxim, but he wasn't looking at the photo, he was looking at the front door. Because taped to it was another note. This one was handwritten, and it had only one sentence. "Some secrets should stay buried." For the first time since buying the house, I saw fear on my husband's face. Not confusion, not sadness, fear. That evening, I couldn't sleep. Every sound from the house made me open my eyes. The old wooden floors, the wind against the windows, the pipes making strange noises. But the worst sound was silence, because silence meant someone was hiding something. At midnight, I heard Maxim talking downstairs. At first, I thought he was on the phone, but when I came closer, I realized he was alone. He was holding an old photograph, and he was whispering, "I'm sorry." I stepped into the room. "Who are you talking to?" He turned around. The expression on his face told me everything. He wasn't just remembering the past, he was talking to someone from it. "Anna, who lived here before us?" He looked at the photograph in his hands, then at me, and finally said the words I never expected to hear. "The girl in that picture was my sister." I felt my heart stop. "You had a sister?" Maxim closed his eyes. "Yes." "Where is she?" A long silence followed, a silence that answered before he did. "She disappeared." The room went cold. "How?" He looked toward the basement, toward the place where we had found the box. I don't know. But something in his voice told me he did know more than he was saying, and before I could push him for answers, someone knocked on the front door. At 1 a.m. We both froze. Nobody should have been there. Maxim slowly walked toward the door. I followed behind him. He looked through the window, and all the color disappeared from his face. Outside stood the woman from across the street, the neighbor who knew too much. In her hands was an old newspaper. And when Maxim opened the door, she didn't say hello. She simply looked at him and said, "After 20 years, you finally came home." Then she handed him the newspaper. On the front page was a photograph of a little girl. The headline read, "Missing Child Case Reopened After New Evidence Appears." And beneath the headline was a name I had never heard before, but Maxim recognized immediately because it was the name of the sister he believed he had lost forever. For several seconds, nobody moved. The newspaper remained in Maxim's hands. The wind outside moved through the trees, making the branches scratch against the windows, a sound that suddenly felt like someone whispering from the darkness. I looked at my husband, at the man who had spent 8 years beside me, the man who had built a life with me, and yet, in that moment, he felt like a stranger. The neighbor, Marina, stood at the door with tired eyes. She wasn't angry. She wasn't threatening us. She looked like someone who had carried a heavy secret for too long and was finally too exhausted to hold it anymore. Her name was Elena, Marina said quietly. Maxim's fingers tightened around the newspaper. "I know." "No," Marina replied. "You know the name. You don't know the truth." That sentence changed everything, because for the first time, I understood something. The mystery was not that Maxim had a past. Everyone has a past. The mystery was that so many people had spent 20 years protecting the same secret. I stepped forward. "Marina, please, tell us what happened." She looked at Maxim. "I think he needs to hear it first." Maxim swallowed. "I'm ready." But his voice didn't sound ready. It sounded like someone preparing to hear a sentence. Marina walked inside and placed the newspaper on the table. The article was about a missing child case being reopened after new evidence was discovered. The child was 6 years old. She disappeared from this exact neighborhood, from this exact house. Elena, Maxim's younger sister. I looked at him. "Why did you never tell me about her?" He looked down. "Because every time I tried, I remembered the last day I saw her." His voice became quieter. "She was standing in the backyard. She was holding her favorite toy. She asked me if I would come with her to the park." He stopped. His hands started shaking. "And I told her no." Nobody spoke. "I was 15. He continued. "I was angry because my parents were fighting. I wanted to be alone. She asked again. I told her to stop following me." He closed his eyes. "That was the last time I saw her." I felt my anger soften, not disappear, but change, because suddenly I wasn't looking at a man hiding a secret. I was looking at someone who had been trapped inside the worst moment of his life. But then Marina said something that made me turn. "That wasn't the last time anyone saw Elena." Maxim looked up. "What?" Marina sat down. "Your father saw her?" The room went silent. "My father?" She nodded. "Your father found her that evening." I felt confused. Then why was she reported missing? Marina looked at Maxim. "Because your father made a choice." A terrible feeling entered my chest. "What choice?" Marina took a deep breath. "The choice to hide the truth." Maxim stood up. "No." His voice cracked. "No, that's impossible." Marina looked at him sadly. "Your father was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of losing everything." Then she told us the story. After the divorce, Maxim's parents were fighting over custody. His father had a new relationship. His mother was struggling financially. There were accusations, threats, arguments. Elena was caught in the middle. That day, she overheard a conversation. She heard that her parents planned to send her away temporarily because they couldn't agree on who should take care of her. A 6-year-old child didn't understand adult problems. She only understood one thing. Everyone was leaving. So she ran away. She hid in the old storage building behind the house. But later that night, a fire started. A neighbor found her, alive, confused, terrified. But instead of calling the police immediately, someone made another decision. She was sent away. Marina whispered. Maxim stared at her. "Who sent her away?" Marina looked down. "Your father." The silence afterward felt heavier than any scream. Maxim stepped back. "My father told everyone she died?" "No." Marina shook her head. "He told everyone she disappeared because he wanted time to solve the situation privately." 20 years? Marina's eyes filled with tears. He lost control of the situation. By the time he wanted to tell the truth, too many people were involved. I looked at Maxim. And your family never searched? He looked broken. I searched. His voice became angry. I searched for years. But you never found her. No. Marina nodded. Because she wasn't missing. That was the moment everything changed. Elena had been alive. Somewhere. Living a different life. But why come back now? The answer came the next morning. A woman was standing outside our house. She looked around 40 years old. Her face was unfamiliar, but her eyes looked exactly like Maxim's. Maxim opened the door. Neither of them spoke, they simply stared. Then the woman said, "You got older." Maxim's face collapsed. "Elena." She nodded. And for the first time in 20 years, brother and sister saw each other. There was no dramatic music, no perfect reunion. Only two damaged people standing in front of each other, unsure what to do. Maxim wanted to hug her, but he stopped, because he didn't know if he had the right. Elena noticed. "You still do that." "What?" "Blame yourself before anyone else can." Those words destroyed him. He started crying. "I thought you were dead." "I know." "Why didn't you come back?" Elena looked at the house. "Because I thought nobody wanted me." The truth was more painful than any lie. She explained that after the fire, she was taken to relatives in another city. She grew up knowing only pieces of the story. She believed her family abandoned her. Years later, she discovered old documents proving what happened. She found Marina. She found the house. And she decided to return. Not for revenge, for answers. But she had one question. Why didn't anyone tell me? Nobody answered. Because the answer was simple. Fear. Everyone was afraid. Her father was afraid of losing his reputation. Marina was afraid of destroying a family. Maxim was afraid of facing his guilt. And I realized something painful. Sometimes people don't hide the truth because they don't care. Sometimes they hide it because they care too much about how painful the truth will be. But hiding pain doesn't remove it. It only gives it more time to grow. Months later, our house changed. Not because we renovated it, because the people inside it changed. Maxim and Elena didn't suddenly become the perfect siblings they once were. 20 years cannot disappear in one conversation. There were difficult days, arguments, silences, moments when old wounds opened again. But now they were healing instead of hiding. Kirill loved spending time with Elena. He once asked her, "Were you scared when you came back?" She smiled. "Yes." "Then why did you come?" She thought for a moment. "Because sometimes being afraid means something is important." The house that once felt full of secrets became a place where people finally told the truth. The old basement was cleaned. The hidden boxes were removed. The walls were painted. But we kept one thing, the carving on the wall, the name. Max, because it reminded us of something important. Not every mark means damage. Some marks prove that someone survived. Years after moving in, people still ask me, "Do you regret buying that house?" And I always give the same answer. No, because we thought we bought a house with a dark history. But we were wrong. We bought a place where a family finally found its way back to each other. And maybe that is the strangest thing about secrets. They feel powerful when they are hidden, but once they are brought into the light, they lose the ability to control us. A home is not made from walls, furniture, or perfect memories. A home is made when people stop running from the truth and finally choose to face it. Because sometimes the thing we fear discovering is exactly the thing that sets us free. What would you do if you bought a house and discovered a secret that connected your family to its past? Would you stay and uncover the truth, or would you walk away? Share your opinion in the comments. I'd love to know what you would have done in Anna's place.